Hello everyone and welcome to my Bachelor Nation 24 channel, I hope. Everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Joan Vassos and Chock Chapple start next chapter together. Viewers saw Chock Chapple propose to Golden Bachelorette Joan Vassos on the season finale. Now the two are ready to start the next chapter of their lives together. Golden Bachelorette winner finally explains his unique name. Many viewers thought of Chock Chapple as the frontrunner on the Golden Bachelorette, but many had questions about his name. Chock isn't a name you hear very often. He was finally asked about it during an interview with Glamour magazine after the Golden Bachelorette season ended. As fans suspected, his real name is Charles. He told the outlet that his mother didn't like Chock as a nickname, so she called him Chock instead. However, he wasn't sure how his mother decided on that specific nickname. Joan Vassos and Chock Chapple start next chapter together. Joan Vassos made it clear from the start of her season that moving out of Maryland was not an option for her. That's where her children and grandchildren are based, as well as her job as a school administrator. However, she changed her mind after getting engaged to Chock. Now they plan to live in New York City together, at least part of the time. The rest of the time they will split between Maryland and Kansas, where Chock Chapple owns and operates an insurance business. Joan Vassos took to her Instagram on Friday, November 15, to share the next step. She and Chock were on a flight to New York City. She said that they plan to start looking for an apartment in the Big Apple. However, they aren't rushing into marriage just yet. Bachelor Nation fans react to couples' plans. Bachelor Nation fans took to Reddit to discuss Joan and Chock's unique plan not to live together but only visit when they can. Most of the comments agreed that it wouldn't end well for the couple. The sun had barely crested over the quiet Virginia hills when Joan Vassos stepped out onto her porch, coffee mug in hand, wrapped in a soft cashmere shawl. The birds were already chirping. The roses she'd planted just last spring were beginning to open again. And for the first time in a long time, Joan felt like her heart had taken root in something real. Something lasting. Chock Chapple was still asleep inside, likely snoring gently, though he'd deny it. The man who had captured America's attention with his quiet strength and those soulful eyes was now capturing Joan's heart in an entirely new chapter of life neither had ever expected. Their love story hadn't followed a traditional script. It began on television under the scrutiny of lights, cameras, and curious fans. The Golden Bachelorette had promised to deliver a romance for the ages, and somehow it had. Despite the whirlwind of dates, hometown visits, and skeptical children on both sides, something about Chock always felt like home to Joan. Not flashy, not over the top, just genuine, gentle, steady. And when he looked at her, she felt seen, not as someone's widow, not as a mother or a grandmother, not even as a contestant, but as Joan, as herself. Chock had said it best during their final evening together on the show. Joan, I don't want this story to end with a rose. I want it to begin with one. And now it had. They'd chosen not to rush into marriage right away. Both had been married before, both had lived full lives, and both understood that love wasn't measured in how quickly you walked down the aisle. It was in the quiet, everyday choices, the decision to show up for each other, to listen, to be patient, to laugh when the GPS sent them the wrong way again, and to lean into the kind of companionship that only comes with age, wisdom, and loss. After the cameras stopped rolling, Joan and Chock slipped away from the limelight. For a while, they traveled. A road trip through the Blue Ridge Mountains, a wine-tasting weekend in Sonoma, a quiet, hand-in-hand walk through Chock's hometown of Annapolis, where Joan met his friends and he proudly introduced her as my girl. They even took a spontaneous pottery class. Joan's pot cracked in the kiln, Chock's came out lopsided, and both were perfect in their imperfection. Now, several months later, they were making real plans together. Not just about where to vacation next, but about what this chapter of life could look like side by side. Chock had put his house on the market, and Joan had cleared out space in her garage for his bike and tools. There were Sunday mornings reserved for the farmers' market, Tuesdays set aside for their new joint volunteering gig at the local animal shelter, and Friday night dinners with Joan's family, who had grown to love Chock more and more each week. Mom lights up around him, her daughter said one evening. It's like watching spring arrive after a long winter. Still, they weren't naive. They had faced bumps along the way. There were moments of insecurity. Would their families blend well? Could they really build something lasting when they'd both already had epic love stories in the past? But every challenge brought them closer. Chock once said, "We don't have decades ahead of us, Joan, but we do have right now. And I want every single right now with you." Joan had cried then, not out of sadness, but because it was the most romantic thing she'd ever heard. And now, the two of them were planning something entirely new. Not a wedding, at least not yet, but a shared retreat for other seniors looking for connection, community, and yes, maybe even love. The idea came to them after a fan mail frenzy post-finale. Dozens of women and men had written to them with stories of late-in-life loneliness, of fear that love had passed them by. Joan and Chock read every letter. One night, after sharing a bottle of red and a pile of them spread across the table, Joan looked up and said, "We could do something about this, you know." And so Golden Together was born. A weekend retreat on the Chesapeake Bay for people 60 and up to come together, talk, dance, laugh, and maybe find what Joan and Chock had found, possibility. Because that's what their story really was. Not just a second chance, but a reminder that it's never too late, not to open your heart, not to trust again, not to choose love, even when it feels risky. In an era obsessed with youth, with fast love and faster breakups, Joan and Chock had shown something beautifully countercultural, that the kind of love forged in the later seasons of life could be even stronger, even sweeter, even more profound. Back on the porch, the screen door creaked open. Chock stepped out, tousled hair, sleep lines still on his cheek, wearing her favorite navy robe. "Coffee?" he asked, reaching for the mug in her hand. She passed it to him with a smile. "Only if you'll share the sunrise with me." He sat beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders as the sky turned to gold. Not the kind of gold that fades, but the kind that lasts. That deep, rich hue that comes only with time. The beginning of their story might have played out on national television, but the most beautiful parts, this quiet morning, the inside jokes, the tender glances, the shared dreams, those belonged only to them. And as they watched the light rise together, Joan Vassos and Chock Chapple knew the truth. They weren't starting over. They were just getting started. Would you like me to write a follow-up story about their Golden Together retreat and the people they helped find love?